And then to show you how the sports gods do you sometime, man, he just got in a situation where he hurt his knee.
Today we're going to be discussing Last Chance U, Season 3, Episode 8. This has been an incredible journey. I've had some fun doing this series. You know, it was something that happened just out of serendipity. I had a thought. I ran it by Leland, and we did Episode 1. And from that episode, we just decided to do the whole series. And I was fortunate enough to get some feedback right around Episode 3 or 4 that encouraged us to just go all the way and do it anyway. So I really appreciate y'all listening to this. I appreciate your input. I appreciate the feedback. And as you can see throughout this episode or throughout this Season 3, the underlying theme has been mentorship, leadership development, the proper perspective as a sports parent, mastery of your craft in terms of coaching, being an athlete, being a skilled player, playing offense, playing defense, understanding the game inside out. And as we talk about this, a lot of the things that are going on throughout, I would say all 3 seasons, it's what we cover in my workbook. And the whole title of my workbook is The Science of Sports Mastery, and the subtitle is Psychokinetics. And we're talking about linking the mind to movement, linking the mind to the body, because you can't just be a good athlete. That's not enough. It's not the 50s or 60s anymore. We're in the 2000s now. Things have changed. And as you can see, even from a war perspective, if you're going to approach things like people have done in the past, using old timeless methods and strategies, at some point you're going to fail. So we have to make adjustments now, not only as students, but also as athletes in how we approach the game, but more importantly, how we approach the game of life. And this is the message that I want to send to sports parents and young coaches. You know, this episode, it opens up, they had just took a loss, I want to say to Butler. So they still have a chance to win the league championship that they hadn't won since 1987. And what Coach Brown, they're in a meeting, he was like, man, I have a 24-hour rule. After 24 hours, we have to flush it. That means whatever happened, you watch the game, watch what you can see, evaluate it, learn what you can, make your adjustments, and move on, because you have an upcoming game either the next Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And now it's time to flush that shit and put your 15 to 20 hours in of studying film for the next opponent outside of your practices, outside of your recovery, outside of doing, you know, your maintenance work from a strength and conditioning side. So if you're a sports parent listening to this, if you're a young coach, after that game is over, and this is whether you win or lose, you celebrate on Friday night or Saturday or whatever it is, and then you have to move on. This is like, it's almost like it's a systematic process. It's almost like a factory or being on the assembly line. You're going to play a game. You're going to go through this whole process. And then when Saturday or Sunday comes, you're going to start this whole process over again, because that's what you have to do to be successful. You can't dwell in the past, whether you win or lose. You know, so these are some of the things that I want y'all to think about. You know, once again, I have my co-host Leland Johnson on. Leland's joining us today. Leland, what's some of your early thoughts from, Episode 8, which is labeled Dust in the Wind?
First of all, I think you hit on the way to coach, the 24-hour rule. I kind of agree with that. But when you become real masterful with your psychology, is when you look at your losses and the bad things that you tend to do, or let's say like the game film of bad games, you tend to watch those games more than you watch the games of you doing positive things. Because the negative film is where you can really learn. That's when you can really perfect your craft. I got myself, and Jazz, I taught Jazz how to really not look at the highlights that you perform on the court, but it's so beneficial for you to look at the negative things that you do and just visualize, take it back, rewind it, watch it again. And when you do that, you tend not to make those mistakes over and over. The visual side of learning the game is so important and can have a real impact on your learning process and your performance on the field. So I agree with that, but I would add that as long as in that 24 hours you breaking down some serious film. You know what I'm saying? Not just running it through your mind of the good and bad things that you did, but immediately how fast can I get that film? All right, well, I need to get that film to me right now so I can see the bad things that I did on the field. So if it includes that, then we good.
You know, it reminds me when I was younger growing up, and I used to hang out with one of my buddies and his aunt. You know, she was probably in her late 20s, mid to late 20s at the time, but she always seemed older. And we would talk with her a lot, and she had a lot of insight, and we would play dominoes with her, play cards. And sometimes it would always be these times when she would say, you know, sometimes when you win, you really lose.
Right.
Sometimes when you lose, you really win.
Right.
And I remember that all of these years. You know, shout out to Niecy LeGrand, my folks. You know, but it goes to show that sometimes you have to learn when you lose. You can fail forward.
Right.
You can learn from your losses. You can learn from your failures. Losing is okay. Failing is okay as long as you learn something from that and become a better person, become a better businessman, become a better entrepreneur, become a better athlete, become a better student. You know, if you got a D on an exam, you have to look at, you know, we've been discussing this, point the finger inward. You know what I mean? And see what it is that you did leading up to that caused you to put in an effort to get a D.
Or view it from this perspective, okay? If I make mistakes and I fix those mistakes, then there's going to be other mistakes I make. And I'm going to fix those mistakes. Then as you go, those mistakes will become fewer and fewer. You see what I'm saying? So actually there's a process if you really, really bring yourself to understand it mentally, there's basically a formula to being successful at something. All you got to do is just be willing to go through the bullshit, be willing to go through the in-between shit, you know, be willing to go through the hurt, be willing to go through the sometime doubt. You know what I'm saying? I was discussing me and I think it was one of my athletes, Wayne, because he's back from Southern California. He was talking. Him and Janie was talking about Jazz when he injured his ankle and the mental approach we took. And I said it was a trip because I never at one time looked at Jazz and said, "Oh shit, man." I was always like, "Dude, we work out all the time. So this is the reason why we was doing what we was doing." So when we got into a situation like this, we understood the whole process of muscle development. You know what I'm saying? It got me to understanding functional movement around that time. You know what I'm saying? I had to get into it because it was an important part of his functionality that we had to fix. That ankle was broke. So we had to get that ankle back strong again. And you already know, bro, you can sprain an ankle and if you don't rehab it right, I mean, I was always told by an orthopedic surgeon that once you injure the ankle, it's never going to be back as strong as it was in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, to understand that as a reality and to understand the work you got to put in, we learned both him and I, we learned a great lesson from that situation.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bay Area company Millennium Edge Apparel, an athletic apparel company that manufactures clothing for basketball, golf, soccer, regular workouts, and even restaurant staff members. To learn more, visit millenniumedgeapparel.com. And now, back to the show. Ultimately, I can appreciate what you're saying, because if you're a student athlete listening to this, and definitely a sports parent, and sports parents, you have to learn how to develop a different perspective as far as not being caught up in the right now and the development of your young student athlete. I need you to realize that there is going to be frustration somewhere. There is going to be setbacks. It could be a not so good team. It could be a terrible coach. It could be personalities clashing. But how do you get through these difficulties? You're going to fail. There's going to be injuries, and there's always going to be periods of uncertainty and doubt. You know what I mean? But this is why we have a program where we're helping the student athlete and we're helping the sports parent help their student athlete get through things like this, because the earlier we learn to deal with things like doubt, competition, uncertainty, and I'm talking about teaching kids these things at 6th, 7th, 8th grade, going over leadership development, how to act on and off the field, it is going to increase your chances of success going into the future once you hit high school. Some things are very, very difficult to undo. And that's what makes this conversation important. You know what, Deshaun, that was important that you said some things are difficult to undo. I was just talking to a dad, and he was telling me about this one kid who's now he'll be going to 6th grade. And as the dad, me and him are going to do some business together. He's a good guy, but he was making a mistake as we were talking. And the mistake he was making was, he said, man, I just seen a 6th grade kid, and all the years I've been playing basketball, I ain't never seen a 6th grade kid like this. And, immediately what comes to my mind is, well, you ain't seen a lot of basketball, one. and then two, you never, ever, ever, ever start having that attitude about a kid that early, because all you doing is you setting a bad seed inside of that kid's mind. As soon as that kid starts to think, oh, I'm better than everybody else, as soon as he starts to think that, that's the worst thing that can happen to an athlete, man. The worst thing that can happen to an athlete. That athlete at all times needs to feel. I used to tell Jazz this. I used to say, Jazz, watch what's in front of you, but don't be so into what's watching in front of you that you forget what's behind you. And I'll give you a great example of that. That series QB1? Yeah, we're going to get to that. There's a kid named Tavon, who was a very good high school quarterback who went to Wake Forest. And Tavon, I always felt was hit with the, you're so good, and because his dad and all that kind of stuff, you're good, you're ordained. He was ordained to be good. And what I would see is, personally, I felt like he didn't have a work ethic. He didn't have a work ethic, a physical work ethic to work on his body. Maybe he's a smart kid, fine, but he finds himself now in a situation where there's a freshman who's at Wake Forest right now, who threw for 300 yards. He threw a couple of interceptions in the game, but as a freshman, a straight up freshman, came in and balled his ass off and basically put dude in a situation where he's going to have to transfer. They're not going to, he's going to have to, because he didn't look what was coming behind him. You know what I'm saying? He was so into what was in front of him that he didn't look behind him and go, oh, this motherfucker, oh shit. Because if he would have started working on the things, the physical things, the mental things, to prepare himself for that battle. He wasn't prepared for that battle. That kid knew who he was. He could see him. He knew who he was. I can guarantee you, him and his parents had conversations on, hey, this is why you're better than him.
This is why, because they're not, a kid like that is not looking to go to school to, okay, I'm going to go to school and be the backup quarterback. Nah, he ain't his vision. His vision is to go in and compete for the #1 job, especially if your talent is one of the best in the nation. And Tavon didn't peep that. You know, I don't know if he had an injury his first freshman year or, which in my mind could even put you in a better situation, because if you're injured, then you can, like I used to tell Jazz, your redshirt year, you treat that as, I got to fix everything that's wrong with my game. And if you're honest with yourself, you're going to look at your game and say, yeah, this is what I need to fix. This is what I need to fix. In his case, I used to always talk to him about defense. And he used to go, I play defense. I said, but you don't play college defense. And then one day I showed him how you play college defense. We watched a video, and you see him now going to the University of Nevada, Reno, you will see has really changed his game. You're going to see, you watched him play. You watched him play in high school. So watch when you see him play now, you're gonna see that there's a certain level of aggressiveness that he's added to his game. You know what I'm saying? And when you do shit like that, of course you're gonna look better the next time you go out and perform.
Hey, you know what if you're a sports parent listening to this and a student athlete listening to this, the important thing that Leland is discussing is vision and sight. And what I mean by that is you have to have, I talk about this with my athletes. I'm glad you brought this up, bro, because I talk about the 3 visions where you have hindsight, you have insight, and you have foresight. So you have to look into the past to fix certain things. It's a must. You don't have to live there.
Right.
You know, so then you have to look at the insight is where you are right now. How has the past affected you to put you in this position that you're in? Now, when I consider the future, that's foresight. Now I can make better decisions, and it can put me in a better place. And I know this sounds simple, but it's much more deeper than that. We're almost talking on a metaphysical or esoteric level.
There you go.
And I'm talking about hindsight. You have to look into the past. When they say you to go in, to find the future, you have to look back at the past. You can't stay there because things obviously change. And then you have to be able to look at your situation objectively right now. This is insight by removing your emotion.
Right.
Being able to accept criticism constructively, being able to look at the, listen to others and view different perspectives, maybe taking a look at perspectives that you might not even agree with.
Right.
And then having that foresight to go into the future to make the best decision,
You're right.
For your circumstance based in where you are right now. Now, we're getting back to, there's a scene on the sideline where Malik is arguing with the O-line coach. He's basically talking back to him, and you could see the O-line coach, he starts to raise his voice. He has some choice words for Malik, and he doesn't normally talk like that. So I could tell, by the end, even his frustration had built up. Leland, what's your take on that? Where I know we've talked about this early on, but there's some nonverbal things that you can see and the importance of that dynamic.
Okay, I'm gonna approach this from a few different perspectives. Okay, I'm gonna approach it from Malik's perspective and how he viewed it, because I remember being an athlete and being in his situation, and you can see on his face where as the game goes on, it finally kind of hits him where he goes, this dude could take my position. Wait a minute, he's actually playing a good game. And that's why he was with the, hey man, come talk to me. Come talk to me. Come over here and talk to me. That was his way of keeping his dominance over dude. You know what I'm saying? Or keeping him in check to the point where he doesn't become too competitive, that he keeps him in the friend zone. You feel me? And Malik was real bad with it. and had to. It was to the point where the offensive coordinator was like, "Hey, man, Malik needs to go sit down." You know what I'm saying? He's kind of like undermining me. And even from that situation, I was like, well, if you had done your job from the coach's perspective, if you had done your job, then he would never, he wouldn't even have the audacity to try to undermine you. You know what I'm saying? He that wouldn't even be an option for him had you done your job earlier. And then I look at it from another perspective. Damn, Malik. he was it was like he was done, bro. The coaches, they were totally checked out with Malik, and I think I noticed that honestly the game before, because Malik had done some things the game before that made some mistakes, and the coach had reacted to it in such a nonchalant way. He was like, "Hey, man, that's all right. That's okay. That's all right. It's okay." And in my mind, I was going, "Wow, has he moved forward? Has he like just said, I'm just gonna get what I'm gonna get out of this situation, and then just move on?" And then in this game, he showed me that that's exactly what he had done. One, the offensive coach had never got into it with Malik ever. You know what I'm saying? Because he's seen the importance of, okay, my quarterback we got to have confidence in him, because if we got confidence in him, then he's going to make me look good on offensive line. You know what I'm saying? So you can see where he and coach had their private conversations. And with him, it had hit the roof. He was like, okay, fuck it. And when he said, man, we all know you're a fraud. You're a fraud, man. You're faking. You're a fraud, brother. When he went there, dude, I was like, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to hear y'all conversation the night before. Because then JD walked right over with a little chuckle, and you can see it. You can see it out the side of on the side of his face. You can see it was like, man, you know what we talked about. Come on, bro. And immediately, dude just shut it down. And I said, uh-oh, Malik's done. He's a goner. And then, they looking towards the future now. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting that you mentioned it that way, because when you look at it, I love dude's demeanor, because he really gets things done without necessarily raising his voice. But right. In that particular situation, it's a poignant moment, because that's almost like a polite way of cussing his ass out.
It was.
Talk to him like that without using any profanity at all.
I dug it. I mean, because you know me, I'm a man. Fuck it. Be a few curse words gonna come out of my mouth, but I love the way he was like, "Hey, brother, you was a fraud, man. You was a fraud. You was a fraud. Everybody know you was a fake and you was a fraud." And I was like, wow, that hit. And I think also what played into that is when you're the type of person who's not confrontational, like he is, he's not confrontational. He'll give you his judgment on how you're approaching things, but he's not confrontational. You know what I'm saying? Right. So to hear a non-confrontational person go off like he did, that was like, wow.
You can tell he had it up to the threshold with him.
Mm-hmm.
They had just lost a Butler, so they're going into this game against Coffeyville, and they still have action at winning the league championship, as I said before, and they hadn't won one since 1987. And I like what J.B. Brown said in the meeting. He was like, no matter what level you're at, we play for championships. And it kind of reminded me being at Portland State. When I was there for a couple years, we played for championships. Playing semi-pro football with the Oregon Thunderbolts, we played for championships. Playing with the Puget Sound Jets up in the Seattle area, we played for championships. Playing out in Arena Ball in Billings, Montana, we were playing for a championship. Coming back, playing for the Portland Prowlers indoor football, we were playing for a championship. And, and it goes to show, if you're at a JUCO, play for the championship. If you're at an NAIA school, you do just the same. Division III, Division II. If you're at a 1AA school in the Big Sky, we're playing for a championship. If you're at the D1 level, we're playing for a championship. But I know winning isn't everything, but it's your pursuit of excellence. It's your pursuit of mastering your craft. If you're going to be a part of this, whether you're a starter or a third stringer, the goal is to be the best that you can every day, because then you're going to come out. That's how you win. So sometimes you can win by being a number 2. Sometimes you can win by being a number 3. One of the things that I really appreciated about this episode that really got me hyped is when Bobby Bruce came out the tunnel with that evil bunny mask on. I felt like Netflix, they captured that, and George Whiteley captured that with the music, the way they came out. It like, that shit made me wanted to put on some pads and get in the backfield. And it made me feel like I could roll out of bed and rush for 100 on that given day. It was just that hype. And I can remember playing, there are certain games that you come out a certain way where you can intimidate an opponent and it's over. Whether you coming out to a certain song, there might be a rustle and tussle before the game. We've been when dude did that, I knew it was over.
I would give you one.
Coming in with a killer mentality.
I would give you one when we played, okay? And you gonna go, oh yeah, that was one. All right, Seattle Jets, national playoffs. We playing against Chicago, up in Seattle. Okay, do you remember that?
I remember that. Man, this is a good one. This is a real good one. Do you want me to tell it, or you gonna tell it?
You tell it. You tell it.
You know, we came out. So here's the thing: we're playing in the what was that? I think that was the semifinal, and we're playing the team from Chicago, right?
Yep.
So the team from Chicago, they came to our field, and what happened was they came to an empty field. So they thought they had made a mistake, and they went to another field. And I think they got back to the field we were playing at maybe 20 minutes before game time to warm up. And what Kenny Austin did to psych these motherfuckers out was we didn't come out for warm-ups. We stayed in the locker room. Because Ken was like, y'all been practicing this shit all week. What sense does it make to go out there and warm up and do these plays? He was like, if y'all don't know it now, you guys don't deserve to win. You really deserve to lose. So he said, we're not coming out for warm-ups. So when they got there, it was an empty field. They warmed up on an empty field.
But you forgetting this element. It was cold as shit.
Oh yeah. And
it was cold, raining, and windy. It was so windy that if you set the ball down, it would blow the ball completely off the field. Completely off the field. Like, set it down, it's rolling off the field right now. So they're out. Not only did we not come out, but they're out there from Chicago saying, man, it's cold out here. It's cold, man. It's cold. Man, they got us out here in the cold. And then he did a double psyche. We as a team, some of us did a double psyche on him. So we come out late. And if you remember, Deshaun, some of us made the agreement, I'm not wearing no shirt. I'm coming out bare armed.
I remember that.
If you watch the film, you'll see me come out. It was like, I ain't got on no sleeves. I ain't got on nothing. And I remember them looking at us like, these motherfuckers are crazy. And understand, they're from Chicago, man. That's the Windy City. They get bad. They get cold weather. They were feeling like this shit is on another level, and these motherfuckers are used to living in an ice box. That in their minds, that's what they was. Because even when we was on the field, I remember the big one, the big buff cat that looked like a penitentiary cat. The one was talking the most. He happened to come on the offensive side a couple of times, and me and him called each other eye, and he was like, "Man, it's cold as a motherfucker out here." And I didn't say nothing to him, but I was like, "Okay, we got these dudes. We got them, man." And they was complaining about the cold the whole time. They was complaining about the weather the whole time.
You know what's treacherous is they get that snow, but we get that cold. I think that was in December.
Yeah.
But rain in the Northwest, if you ain't used to that and it's cold and the wind, you know, so that was a cold psych job. I mean, I don't think that's ever been done in the probably the history of football where you just don't come out for warm up. This is a true story. You know what I mean? If anybody's listening to this that played with us on that 2000 Puget Sound Jets team, they know we didn't come out at all.
Nah.
You know, the kickers didn't even go out.
No, they didn't.
And not until it was time for the captains, that's when the whole team came out. So It's like I said again, when he came out with that evil bunny mask, it just took me back that like, okay, this is real football. I'm coming to get you.
I told Shannon, when I seen that, I say, Shannon, I said, they won the game.
It was over. It was over right there. You know, because you can see that they panned the camera back to the Coffeyville side, and you could just see like there was a look. I see that look in their eyes. It probably ain't even a way to describe that look in the English language, but I knew that had them. You know, we probably had to go to speak in French or Arabic to describe that feeling, but I don't think I could just see that. You know, so man, shout out, man, that my guy Bobby Bruce, man.
Shout out to Bobby, man.
That was cold. You know, and they ended up winning, and then later they ended up winning and going to a bowl game, and they won the bowl game.
Yeah.
So, what were some of the other bullet points or important points that you got of that episode? I know Miss Pinkard, she's played in a tremendous role throughout this series. It's a trip, man, because looking at this and looking at her heart and looking at her soul and how she bears herself, I ain't gonna say she's better than Miss Brittany, but I can really dig Miss Pinkard, man, because she's putting her heart and soul, and they both done exceptional jobs, man. But I can really appreciate Miss Pinkard too, man.
And you know what? I agree with you, and I'm not gonna say. Well, let's say this. I'll say she was better for these kids than Miss Brittany, because, and I'm not trying to. My listeners, please don't. I mean, because she's dealing with African American young men, and let's take it back to the point when she was kind of talking about. She said, you know, our young men in our society have been beaten up and they haven't been taught. So it's up to me to teach them what they don't know. And from that perspective, she understands in a way that Miss Brittany won't understand. You know what I'm saying? Because she hasn't walked in the shoes of an African American, and Miss Pinkard is aware of certain things in society that Miss Brittany is not aware of. So I'm not saying she's better, but she was better for these individuals, these black young men. And I think if you had her when in the EMCC situation, she would have been good for some of those. Ronald Holly. She'd be good for him and a couple of others. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying she's better, but what she does is she's aware of an area that black men go through that probably Miss Brittany wasn't aware of and doesn't bring to the forefront to kind of deal with.
I like how you put that, man. I really like how you put that, because she did a good job of going deeper with the historical connection on why they should go to school, why you have a fucking privilege to be in school, and why you should take advantage of that. You know, right. That's incredible. You know, Leland, as we get into the fourth quarter of this episode, brother, you know, there's a scene at the end where you have Malik, you have Marcel, his dad, and then you have the trainer, where they're talking about Malik's goals for the next season. And the trainer is like, how much weight are we trying to put on? You know, so they're talking about, once again, physical goals and making physical plans. And then his dad talks about, okay, We need to put him on a certain type of meal plan. I'll buy the protein powder. You just tell me what we need to do. And then the trainer asks, okay, what else do we want to work on? Malik's dad, he bursts in and says, well, we got to work on his speed, his short burst, because, you know, when he gets through the hole, it looks like he's running through there like an armored truck, you know, and you can look at Malik's face and his eyes. It's like he's almost demoralized. And
but you know what though? I think you analyzed this before, and I think you had the best description of this when you first seen this scene. I know when we were talking, this is what you said to me. You said, you know, when I was watching that, immediately I could tell that it was fake, and they were just doing that for the camera.
Well, that was the weight room scene, and yeah, that's when they were in the weight room, and you could almost see this again. But my thing where I was going, Leland, is that you guys have watched him play the whole season. The physical part ain't even the problem. It's the mental and the psychological part. It's where's the mentorship on a day-to-day basis going to be? How are we going to work on your leadership development? How are we going to work on you becoming an effective communicator to get people?
In other words, you were saying that they were totally clueless about what was going with him upstairs.
Yeah, they were totally clueless, because if it was me, I would be saying, okay, if Cornell Ward was his mentor, we're going to go back to Cali, and I need you around Cornell Ward every single day. We're going to get you're going to work exclusively with Cornell Ward as your quarterback coach. Y'all are going to talk every single day, and we're going to point the finger and say, how can we learn from all of these fuck-ups that went on? How can we create a better presence for the future? Now, here's my thing, Leland. Like, you know, you had addressed Marcel before. If I'm addressing Marcel and I'm addressing him now, I got a load of questions, because my first one is going to be, what is the vision that you have for Malik as an athlete?
Right.
Then I'm going to ask him, who do you want him to become on the field and off the field? If I'm talking to Marcel, what is the vision that you have for him as a man? Who do you want him to become in adulthood? What can keep you from making this vision for Malik a reality? Now, despite the resistance, how do you get Malik from where he is now to the place you want him to go? That would be my question.
Yeah, because I think at times he wanted to be known as the catalyst to Malik's career. But then, you know, in the times where the catalyst is supposed to step up and actually be that, he failed in every aspect. He failed in every chance that he had that opportunity. I had said before, and you remember I went in on him. I would have pulled him to the side like, dude, what are you doing? Do you even know your son? But, you know, other things were a factor for me. Like, you know, like I told you, the way Malik describes that relationship, in Malik's eyes, he really don't have any control. I mean, when you describe your relationship with your dad like this, yeah, that's my dad. He was, you know, he was out of my life for a certain, you know, we weren't, obviously he was saying we wasn't cool, but we cool now, you know. And if the dad never knew that Malik wasn't cool with that, and y'all never had that conversation, then no, you don't have a grip on that situation. I really felt like there was a big disconnect in their relationship, a huge disconnect. The best things, the best things you can do with your kid while you're developing him in sports is allow yourselves to have those little bitty side conversations.
The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the parent to work through together. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the coach to work through together. It was created in a sense and in a way to bridge the gap in communication between these parties and build a successful relationship dynamic. To learn more, visit sportsmastery.com/workbook or check out the show notes page and click on the link. And now back to the show.
You know, allow yourself to talk about things that maybe a subject of sports will segue you to, but has nothing to do with sports, or just take an incident in sports and have a conversation about it. I'll give you an example. My petty ass, okay? I'm petty as shit. But this is where my pettiness actually helped my son. There was a situation at one time when Jazz was like in 3rd and 4th grade. He was playing with this group of kids, and they were probably the best basketball athletes in the area at that time. And, these guys finally got me to, okay, I'll bring them over. They were like, man, I'm telling you, because if you do that, we'll do this. So I brought them over. And the reason why I hadn't brought them over before is because when you get your kid in situations around just kids that ain't cool, it can really fuck them up. And Jazz had already had this problem with his physicality. He was a fat kid. So other kids would call him fat, chubby. He didn't look like a basketball player. The little skinny kid was the kid that everybody looked at and was like, oh, he's going to be a great player. Well, when we went into the situation, I was on the way down to the game. I would tell Jazz, see this little kid here? Stay away from his little ass because he's a little asshole. So this little kid here, he's a little dumbass. See this kid here? This kid here, he's been ordained the greatest one. So make sure that when you compete against him, get in his ass. Well, there are parents that will look at that as, hey man, you're talking about a child. What are you doing? Actually, I'm putting myself down on Jazz's level, and I'm going, look, I'm looking through your eyes, but I'm giving you my outlook and my brain and my experience. This is what you see in these kids. I'm telling you, this is what they are. This is what they are, and this is what they're going to do to you when you go out there. So this is how you're going to have to be. The very first game he went out there, he did exactly what I told him not to do. Fortunately for us, our day-to-day conversations, our interactions every day, and me noticing things about him, letting him talk sometimes and peeping out his body language and how he does things, you develop a thing inside you. And you've done this with Brian. You develop a thing where you go, oh, I know how to hit that switch. You know what I'm saying? So after the game, we get to talking, and I hit the switch. From that point on, that whole tournament, everybody was like, wow, hey man, your kid won the MVP of the tournament. And Jazz actually was the MVP of that tournament. So those are the things that you need to do with your kid in order to have him start to understand what confidence and what confidence building is. Confidence building is having day-to-day conversations about negative things, about things that he's in fear of, and teaching him that they're not actually a problem to you unless you let it be a problem to you. You know what I'm saying? And you teach him that no one's perfect in this game. Mistakes are going to be made. The cool thing is once you make the mistake, now you can fix it so you'll never make the mistake again.
Right. I think what's beautiful about what you're talking about, it really goes to show how, like, some of us as a whole can be short-sighted and be narrow-minded at the same time when the student athlete is coming up, and sometimes I think we want to win so much or see little Johnny do so good early on that we don't discipline like we should. And what I mean by that is sometimes it's tough to sit a dude down for 2 games, 3 games, a half a year, or just go deep into training, or don't even allow them to physically train or do the strength and conditioning if they're struggling in other areas. And what I mean by that is I had a kid, he would struggle socially in the 7th and 8th grade. And in the 8th grade, I think in the middle of his 8th grade year, he was flirting with a girl at school. I think they were friends. And he basically touched her ass one day, and they suspended him. I think it was for a day. And I used to tell him, I'm like, you realize you're living in the day and age where you could get charged for sexual assault.
Yeah.
You know, rape isn't rape the way you think it is. I'm like, you're African-American male, you're touching a woman, a young woman, you know, whether y'all know each other, y'all cool or not, when another teacher sees that, they have to report that because they don't know what's going on. And he did it again. But this time he was saying some obnoxious stuff to a different female. And they kicked his ass out of the little private school that he was in. He ended up having to go to a charter school for the rest of his 8th grade and actually his whole 9th grade year. Finally gets back into school. But while this thing is going on, I'm like, listen, I talked to him and I talked to his dad and I talked to the young athlete first because I got to thinking, you've been suspended. You had to go to, no, it wasn't a charter school. It's an alternative school, you know, where you done fucked up and all the fuck ups are. Excuse my language. I'm just talking straight right now. So I was thinking about this as I was younger, you know, what my folks would do. And I was at that point, I couldn't take his dad's money. I said, you got to go. You know, I need you and Pops. And we had already been working with a friend of mine who's a licensed clinical social worker. I'm like, y'all got to go do this work first. There's some things here that I can't handle. And if he's failing in school or he's getting kicked out of school for these things, I feel like training is a reward. We got to go fix this. Well, they wouldn't fix that. And now the kid, he's going into his junior season in high school and he's in a much better place. Him and his dad is on the same page. And had I not done that at that time, the situation would be worse. And, I don't think his dad liked it at first, but we're men and we've been able to keep that conversation going. And he, and later he was like, I appreciate what you did and how you helped my son.
I just want to say, I bet you right now he could tell you, hey man, I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? Because I have not identical, but I have a friend who has a son who was a very good basketball player here in Oregon. And I think what he got bit with was him and Jazz used to work out when they were younger, used to work out with each other. You work out with someone for so long. One person develops a superiority complex where they feel like I can beat you anytime I want to. Sometimes if you're the person on the bottom of that, you don't understand how to deal with it. It can mess you up in several different ways down the road. And where it messed him up is, Jazz is in his mind state, and I can see this because I'm viewing it from the outside. In his mind state, as he started accomplishing things in sports and started doing, he felt like his accomplishments came from people's neglect of what he put into the sport, right? In other words, it created a drive inside of him, an insatiable drive inside of him that's like, wow, it's like no other. Well, this other kid, instead of looking at that and going, I should piggyback off of what Jazz is doing, because if I pick up his habits, there's no way I can lose. He would look at it in more of a competitive way, where he was competitive. So I would ask Jazz at times and say, so how are y'all interactions? He's like, oh man, he's real competitive with me. He gets real competitive. But then, when I get serious with him, he doesn't compete right, where he would do stuff like this, where he'll go, Jazz, let's play up to 2. Just me and you, let's play up to 2. Jazz will win. He'll go, all right, no, let's go up to 3. Jazz hit the 3. Nah, scratch that. We're going up to 4. So in his mind, I ain't never lost because it's another goal we got to go to. He never accepted defeat. He never would accept, okay, you beat me. Now let me find out what you're doing to beat me so that one day I can beat you. So that competitive edge that he could have built in that situation, he didn't. And fell in love with the admiration that comes when you're a good performer in a sport. Okay, notice I'm saying when you're a good performer in a sport, the admiration that comes along with it. He was more addicted to that than he was the internal of, I'm going to show y'all how good I could be at this sport through my work ethic. Okay. So when he went to school, all of those things I told his dad right before he went to school. I say, man, if you want an honest opinion from me, I had a partner go to my boy's game, and man, I heard he was doing all those antics and the crazy shit and the look at me, pounding his chest and all that. I said, man, you really don't want him to go there. And he was like, well, who said that? Fuck them. Whoever said that about my son, fuck them. And at that time, I was like, wow, this is my good friend, and he's really being bit by the fucking bug. So I was like, okay, well, man, you know, I tried to tell you. And every time we would talk from that point on, I guarantee you he would draw away from our conversation that, man, I'm trying to be negative about my son. And I wasn't trying to be negative, but I would always drop that seed. Hey, man, are you sure he's doing the right thing? Are you sure? And as he went to school, man, this coach is an asshole. And I'm like, well, you sure it's not Isaac? You sure it's not? Because then I started watching his games. And when I would watch the TV, I would see bad body language. And in one situation, they're on national TV. And the coach turns to talk to him and probably the guy that they consider the star on the team. And the camera caught him in a real effed up situation. The camera goes to him, and the coach is trying to communicate with him. And the other player is going like, come on, man. Come on, man. Will you stop tripping? And he has this, you know, he has that look on his face. You know what I'm saying? And I'm looking at this on national TV. I immediately call his dad. I go, hey, bro, did you see that on national TV, bro? Did you actually see? He said, yeah, I seen it. I said, you know what, Rich? Because he immediately started pointing the finger at the coach. Man, that motherfucker probably said this. I said, you know what, Rich? Until you start seeing that your son is the cause of this problem, until you start seeing that, this situation ain't gonna change, okay? Month later, kid dropping out of school. He's leaving the school, right? And I point out to him where I said, Rich, this is not a good situation for him. There was only 3 schools that was looking to give him a scholarship. They're not going to look at it like he's a Division I kid coming from a Division I school, and then a bunch of schools are going to go after him like they did with Jazz. I said, one, your son has no positive film. And every time he's dealt with every game, there's been some situation between him and the coach that's caused him to act the ass. I said, so unless you want to see that film, then I suggest you start having a conversation with your dude right now. Unfortunately, it took for him to have to now be in a junior high, be in a junior college, and to understand it, and then to show you how the sports gods do you sometime. Man, he just got in a situation where he hurt his knee, and it may be an ACL or MCL situation, but that's what the sports gods do to you. When you don't respect the game, when you don't respect a learning environment, when you don't respect that I have to mature and I have to grow as I go along in this game, if you don't respect those things, man, the sports gods ain't nice to you. And even if you do respect those things, the sports gods are going to test you. You know what I'm saying? They're going to test you. And unless you mentally prepare yourself for all these different tests that are going to come along, then this is not going to be a fun journey. I know guys that hate sports. Their experience, they'll tell you, man, I can't stand basketball. I can watch it, but man, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? That's because they didn't like you said, there's a living in the moment time, there's a looking in the past, and there's a situation where you kind of forecast. I don't think they allowed themselves to share those experiences, because if they shared those experiences, truly shared those experiences, or was a part of those experiences, there's no way you can look at and say, man, I don't enjoy this game, or I hate this game, because you're going to draw something out of it where you're going to, it's going to help you grow in life. So
Yeah, I appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to close out. You're listening to Leland Johnson and Deshaun Fauntleroy at Sports Mastery. You know, one of the things that separates us, like I said before, is taking a true look at mentorship. And what Leland was just discussing in and of itself is, as a coach and a sports parent, being a reflective thinker. We have to learn how to think, and we have to learn how to think about the things that we think about. So think about that. We want to help you create a proper perspective. We want to help aid in your leadership development. You know, this is what the science of sports mastery is about. And you can see it's not something to be glossed over. You know, we take this serious, we take it deep. And, you know, I really appreciate y'all following us. If you have any comments, information, statements, feedback, you feel like you want to cuss me out, cuss Leland out, hit me through the contact page, or you email me personally at Deshaun@sportsmastery.com.